Hello and welcome, fellow stargazers, to yet another episode of the Outlaw Astrology podcast. I am your intrepid star guide, APM, and today we're continuing through our archetypal journey through the zodiac sign with Cancer, the Great Mother or the Great Nurturer. Before we dive into those nurturing waters, a quick reminder to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and also leave a review because it helps others find the podcast, and join our community of cosmic outlaws on Substack for exclusive content. You will find all links in the show notes. And now let's explore the depths of Cancer's emotional wisdom. Alrighty, so last few episodes were Aries, Taurus, and Cancer, and we're doing like the hero's journey here that is commonly made popularized by Joseph Campbell when he talked about the hero with 1,000 faces. It was actually a very fascinating documentary about him ages ago, which is his body of work is what this is based on. And so when we talk about the sanctuary of the soul, which is a really poetic way of just talking about that part of ourself that is the essence, the temperament on which what we call personality or self is built. And so in every hero's journey, there comes a moment when wounds must be tended and strength regained. Cancer represents this sacred refuge. It's the emotional sanctuary where we retreat to process our experiences and nurture our authentic selves. Like the moon's cyclical nature, we too must honor our need to pause, to withdraw, to reflect, and reimagine renewed. And so consider how the crab carries its home wherever it goes. It is not a weakness, but a profound wisdom. Emotional intelligence becomes our superpower when we learn to create safety within ourselves rather than constantly seeking it externally. And so the Great Mother, the Great Nurturer archetype teaches us that true security comes from honoring our inner tides rather than resisting them. Okay? And so the previous episodes were building on the idea that, for example, previously Gemini was meeting duality, meeting us and others, our opinions, other people's opinions, our beliefs, other people's beliefs, internal, external, inner world, outer world, etc. Those are where you meet diversity, meaning there's an other all of a sudden that there wasn't previously. And there is the need to navigate duality. Unfortunately, duality is also black and white thinking, and that can be a problem. Yes, it makes decision-making quite easy, but the difficulty lies in the fact that dichotomy thinking is rigid. It provides a certainty and a clarity that may miss nuances. It is a hammer to a nuanced scalpel. So if you're doing surgery, you're not going to use a hammer. It's a blunt instrument. It's meant to smash things. It's not meant to cut with precision. Or even a laser being used to cut, because that is even more precise. Okay, so we're talking about precision here. Gemini giving us that dichotomy. Cancer suddenly being aware of that dichotomy, deciding to move beyond it, and moving beyond it by asking Cancerian questions, which is, how do I feel about this? Does it resonate? Does it feel right? Does it turn me on even? That sort of thing. What is my gut telling me? What is my intuition telling me? So that is basically what Cancer's emotional wisdom can do. It can take us beyond dualities to the subtleties, to the nuances, to the fair, refined shadings that we might miss because we're only considering two opposing points of view that are highly polarized and therefore extreme. Now we're looking at the waters, what I would call the waters of memory, and Cancer calls us to dive beneath the surface of consciousness. And we're talking sometimes ancestral waters that flow through our veins, via our blood. And here we encounter not just personal emotions, but collective memories carried through generations. And so the hero, that's us, must understand and comprehend what they've inherited emotionally whilst not remaining defined by it. So that is, if we come from a family that's taught us to cut off our emotions or taught us to get into them, but in ways that are going to make it difficult to interact or navigate the world in a healthy and safe way for us and for others. And so those are emotional inheritances that we have to be very aware of, because that's how it is. But just because it is that way does not mean that that's who we are. Our feelings are part of who we are. They are not the whole entirety of who we are. The same way our mind may give us the impression that this part of us, the narrative that we tell about ourselves, is who we are. And quite frankly, it's also part of who we are, but it's not the entirety. It's rather like missing the forest save for the trees. I mean, if you look at the forest, you cannot see an individual tree. It's usually when you go up close, in person and personal, that you can see detail like that. Okay? And so Cancer is in the invitation to notice the personal nuance of life beyond a binary that most of us have been taught since childhood to honor and to respect and to not question or challenge, even though both are necessary for health and well-being. And so when we explore ancient cultures and how they viewed the Divine Mother, and we're talking about from Isis to Demeter to Kuan Yin, it's a keeper of wisdom that transcends time. Our emotional patterns often echo family stories. And personally, I've noticed this in my own family. I'll notice a certain theme. Like, say for example, some families have the theme of people not being able to find themselves or find a career, or relationships tend to be very fraught. And that can be a pattern that goes on for generations. In my family, there is a very fraught parental caretaker type of friction going on. And what that means is that it is usually a relationship that's very complicated and fraught, and that's usually with the father or the mother, which is pretty much almost anybody, but each family has this sort of this sort of pattern, but it's going to be unique to everyone. And in my case, I was taught to be very stoic. I was taught not to show my emotions. I was taught also it was best not to have them, and to unintentionally slowly let them eat away at you from the inside. That's what I was taught, which does not lead to the best mental, emotional, and physical health outcomes, which is a consideration that emotional family patterns can echo family stories. Yes, both told and untold. I forgot to mention that. But most of the time, it's usually going to be underneath the radar unless you look back. And so, as I was saying, that pattern is one that I have to constantly contend with, work with, and try to navigate the world the best I can with it. And sometimes a family story can be, the women of our family just don't know how to have happy relationships. I'm not speaking specifically of me. I'm giving an example like, the women of our family we never get a good person. We just don't have healthy relationships in this family. Or we're not those people. We're not emoters. We're not, people who feel out like that. I mean, those people are just clearly emotionally stunted because they're always crying. But our family, we're cool-headed. That sort of vibe. So those are some of the stories that we might tell ourselves, or we might just assume is a fact that everybody experiences, because we have a tendency, even at the Cancerian point in the journey, to assume that our experiences are universal. And so we want to bring compassionate awareness to these patterns. We want to release what no longer serves while honoring what our lineage provided. So I am a neurodiverse person. Everybody in my family, most of the people in my family are on the spectrum somewhere, to varying degrees. I have started to notice it more and more as I'm getting older and having clearer vision when I look back and say, okay, I can see the pattern. For example, in my family, extreme introversion is a thing. That is the not interested in anybody out there, couldn't care less, love my company. This is just the narrative. I like my space, my company. I don't need those people out there. And it's not just that you just don't need them. You are lacking interest completely. You don't care about anybody out there. You're like, I got my little thing here. I'm having a good time. No, you do not need to visit. No, I do not want to go out drinking with you. Thank you. It's lovely, but I'm good. Kind of vibe, which can be great. You know, enjoying your own company is lovely, but the downside of that is it can be very isolating. And so with a little bit of emotional intelligence, because Cancerian wisdom is emotional intelligence, being aware of one's emotions and being emotionally granular, which means the ability to name the emotion you are feeling and where you are feeling it. I'm not just feeling bad, because consider emotional granularity can go as like this. I feel bad. Okay? That is very general. All the way to I am irritated, or I am frustrated. I am trying to get this done. I'm trying to work with this person, and they seem to be going out of their way to make things more challenging for me when all I'm trying to do is resolve issues, for example. And that is granularity. Granularity being able to say it's not just anger, because the next, in the middle of I feel bad, there's I'm angry. Okay, that's much better. Now we have an idea of where we are, what the nervous system is doing. It's in survival mode, because fight, flight, freeze, fawn, etc. are all survival mode, whereas rest and repair, you'll have the excitement, the joy, all of that sort of thing is on that side of our nervous system. And that's how you know, you can create from one, you can create from both, but you're more efficient and better at creating from rest and restore, rest and repair than you are from survival mode, because survival mode makes it so your neocortex, which is the seat of creativity, is not as active because it doesn't have the blood flow that the rest of your brain would have, which is the rest of the older parts that are responsible for the fight, flight, freeze, etc. responses. And the reason why I mention that is emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is becoming aware, as I said, of what you feel and being more specific about it. So I'm not just feeling bad. I'm angry, which is the middle of that spectrum. I just made it up, but it's the middle. And then I am frustrated, and here's what I'm frustrated by, and I know I'm frustrated because I feel it right in the center, right about solar plexus heart level. I feel something there, and that's usually where I feel frustration. And that is emotional intelligence. And adding to that, knowing when to express my emotions in what settings and to whom merely is that steps up. So now I know what my emotions are. I can feel them in my body. I can feel the feelings and sensations that go along with that, the physiological symptoms that go along with those feelings. I know what they are. I can name them. I know where I feel them. And then you can move towards, okay, I can name it. Now I know, okay, I'm angry, but I am in a meeting with a potential client, and I cannot blow up even though I am frustrated. So I must find a way to calmly get through this situation the best I can, and then go safely somewhere I can express my anger. That is also also emotional intelligence. And knowing whom to share it with. Okay, you're at work, it's probably not a good idea to share it with your boss or colleagues. Or if you have your own business, it's probably not wise to share it with a team, but sharing it with a wise confidant and friend is emotionally intelligent. And so sometimes our lineage doesn't always, and that's what also another Cancer theme, sometimes our lineage does not provide us with the best tools to navigate life in the way that we want, because sometimes we're not giving proper role models or the nurturing that we need and want. So now we're looking at emotional alchemy. And the most profound teaching of Cancer is the vulnerability is not a weakness. It has transformative power. So when we allow ourselves to feel without judgment fully, our emotions can become our allies rather than adversaries. So if you don't even know that you're angry, anger is a fight response. It means my boundaries have been transversed and I need to respond to that now. Anger is meant to be responded to. It's a very active emotion. When you're angry, you want to do things. You want to take action. You want to troubleshoot. The thing about anger is like fear as well, is that, like I said, your neocortex isn't getting the most blood flow. Most of that blood flow is going to the older parts of your brain, because fight and flight require instantaneous responses. And if your neocortex is engaged, you'll be overthinking things and not responding. So if you need to run away, you don't need to be standing there looking and saying, is that a rock or is that a tiger? Is that a rock? Is that a tiger? You sort of thing. You just need to get the hell out of that. And if you need to defend yourself, standing around looking and saying, gee, what weapon would be good to defend myself with? And what would be the appropriate course of action, instead of just defending oneself? Sometimes you don't get the option of being able to think about it excessively. So that's why neocortex would have gotten in the way of our ancestors surviving their various environments around the world 50, 80,000, 100,000 years ago. So we're talking about how emotional vulnerability can be a strength. So allowing ourselves to know ourselves fully, you can then understand emotions and feelings can be allies. And how they're allies is keeping you aware. It's like the sensors on the USS Enterprise. By the way, for you anybody not into Star Trek, USS does not stand for, it stands for United Starship. It doesn't stand for United States. But anyway, like the Enterprise has sensors on it. Your nervous system is not just a security system or an operating system as well, but it's also a sensing system. And so it's always sensing. And it's like water shape-shifting. It's between solid, liquid, vapor. Our emotional nature contains multitudes. And also how you experience anger changes from moment to moment. It may feel as if it were the same, but if you were to experience more emotional granularity, therefore more emotional awareness, you will notice that the anger you feel at certain things is going to be different. Or when you're afraid, it's similar but not the same, because the nervous system is highly fluid, spontaneous. It'll pull out an emotion if it looks like the situation is similar to one already experienced. Now, this might be the appropriate response. It's making its best guess. So whatever emotion happens is your nervous system's best guess on how to respond. And so Cancer energy is the wisdom of emotional awareness, the wisdom of feeling your feelings deeply, fully, completely, and then being able to navigate from there. So the whole point would be emotional intelligence. You have the brains that, and the ability to notice duality in Gemini energy. It progresses to now taking that energy within and then integrating and processing. How do I navigate my life based on this information, this energy? So the Great Mother, the nurturer archetype, shows us how to practice emotional alchemy. So transforming grief into compassion, fear into discernment. I like that. Fear into discernment. I really, really like that. Because fear is not the kind of energy that wants to take action immediately. It's like, hold on, wait. I need to get my bearings. So yes, that would be discernment. Anger into boundaries. That is also intelligent, because it's like, because that's what your anger is telling you. Fear is like saying, be cautious, be discerning. It's not about certainty. It's about making the best and most educated choices based on your emotional state at any given point. And the reason why I say that is because everybody, in varying degrees, uses their emotions to decide what choices to make, what is resonant and what is not. What to take, what to leave, whether it's a this, I'll take this and not that type of vibe. It's our emotions that help us make those choices, those decisions. And so, whether we're turning grief into compassion, because once we experience a loss, we can be kind and compassionate in others and their losses, because even though we may not have experienced the exact loss that they've experienced, we've experienced loss, and we understand how sometimes painful that can be, and how that process can sometimes be messy and a bit sticky to navigate. And so we can move towards genuine integration. And so this isn't about telling a story about how, my anger is, how to bypass our way past anger. Because I know that in our current society, we're taught to be positive, relentlessly optimistic at all times. And optimism has its place, which is why we experience it, because it would not have continued on through our human genome, our DNA, if optimism did not serve an evolutionary purpose, which is to be able to anticipate and have a hope for a more positive or even better future. Which is why that optimism might make a nomadic tribe leave an area for another area if the opportunity for greater resources for the tribe 80,000 years ago was greater. It is a risk, because you know what's going on here in this particular territory. You have no idea how life is going to be when you move over there, but the resources over there appear richer, and so we might thrive over there with, if we work together. And so Cancerian energy is also about forming emotional connections with other people. Now, some of the deities about that, because we want to embody our highest expression, that's the nurturing wisdom. We want to hold space for all our parts, but some of those deities that have anything to do with this, we've got Isis, who's Egyptian. So this is some of the Divine Mother, Moon Goddess myths across culture. And here's why I am talking about that. Because stories and what you resonate with will give you a very clear picture, or at least a clearer picture, of how you wish to navigate something. So depending on which gods and goddesses, if you work with the energy of gods and goddesses, if you don't, that's fine. Your practice is individual to you, and I always encourage thinking for yourself and choosing what is right for you, because if you choose what is right for you, you have less repair within yourself, more coherence within yourself emotionally is what you're going for. This resonates with me. I understand other people may not like this choice, but it feels right for me, so I'm going to make this choice. And that would put me more in alignment and more coherent, meaning my heart and my mind are in agreement. And your nervous system can tell the difference between incoherence, meaning heart and mind and other parts not having a conversation with each other and there is no common ground, to coherence in which they both agree this is the right choice, this is the right way forward. So that's Cancer energy giving us emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, which is necessary and needed. Now, a caveat about that: emotional awareness and intelligence is not accessible to everyone. Simply that brain anatomy, some people don't have all the same, we don't all have the same brain anatomy. Some people were born with certain parts not present. And we're talking about people with antisocial personality, particularly psychopathy, but there are other syndromes, disorders, and etc. that also that are due to a lack of a part in the brain. So a certain part of the brain anatomy is not present, is missing. They were born without it, so their nervous system is going to work very, very differently from someone who actually has that piece of brain, that part of brain anatomy present. So sometimes neurodiversity, we don't always know that sometimes people just don't have that capacity because they never had it. They never had it. And they never are going to get it. So that is an opportunity to express compassion to ourselves if that person is us, and to others if we know it happens to be other people. So Isis, here are some of the myths I'd like to share. Isis is an Egyptian deity and one of the most powerful and very multifaceted goddesses in the Egyptian pantheon. She was the goddess of motherhood, magic, and healing, and she resurrected her husband Osiris after he was deceived by his brother Set, and quartered, and body parts strewn everywhere, dismembered. And I should probably have also stated previously that kind of stuff would be mentioned in this episode, but that's what happened in the myth, and she demonstrates her incredible regenerative powers. Now, she's a lunar deity, and she represents the cyclical nature of birth and death. And so her devotion to her son and to her husband establishes her as an archetypal protective mother, but also a protective spouse. We've got Selene, Greek, and this is a moon personification of the moon in Greek mythology, and she drives her lunar chariot across the night sky. And for those of you who love Greek mythology or love mythology period, you might also note that the sun god, Apollo, and Helios, the titan that predates Apollo, also had chariots. They had the sun chariot to her lunar chariot. And her most famous stories involves her falling in love with a mortal Endymion, and Zeus grants eternal sleep and youth so Selene can visit him every night. And she represents the constant devotion and eternal cycles, and she embodies both the light of consciousness and also the dream realm of the unconsciousness. Now we've got Parvati of the Hindu pantheon, and this is a gentle form of the Divine Mother in Hinduism. So Parvati is the nurturing aspect of Shakti, that is divine feminine energy, and she wins Shiva's heart through devotion and represents steadfast love and patience. And as the mother of Ganesha, she embodies maternal devotion, and in her form as Kali or Durga, she represents and reveals the fierce protective aspects of motherhood, which you will also find in Demeter's myth, which I've mentioned in the Taurus episode. And this demonstrates how nurturing energy can transform into protective power when necessary. Lastly, we have Chang'e. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm probably not. It's Chinese, and this is the beautiful Chinese goddess who resides on the moon, which I really love this idea. According to myth, she was once mortal, but consumed the elixir of immortality, and those of you who love folklore will note you're going to find the elixir of mortality magical object and archetype in many different myths. And this caused her to float to the moon, and she represents sacrifice and longing, and she's separated from her beloved husband. And during the Mid-Autumn Festival, people make offerings to her and connect her to themes of unity, reunion, and the eternal cycles represented by the moon. So, considering that Cancer is guided by the moon, or ruled by the moon if you choose, it's about that devotion. It's devotion, it's eternal cycles, because the moon represents the cyclic nature of reality and a sort of grounding, steadfast, patient energy. Okay? And the reason why I went back to talk about this, because the Great Mother archetype, you can connect with it in your chart, but you can also connect with it with various gods or goddesses who represent that energy. And their stories, because stories can also be archetypal, the stories are meant to help. How to navigate motherhood, how to navigate this particular emotional milestone or sticking point or what have you. So Cancer energy is learning how to navigate the emotional realm, our inner world, without getting stuck in emotional quagmires or quicksand, and how to integrate that, to have a healthy walk through the world, to know how to make choices that are best for us and those around us by being more emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent. And that is the gift of Cancer. So, as we conclude our journey with Cancer, consider that the tender places within us are also the most powerful. The Great Mother archetype reminds us that our capacity to feel deeply is not a limitation, it is one of our greatest gifts. It is also about emotional sensitivity, and having that gift can allow us to be more present and to be more aware of a world starving for authentic connection. So the key takeaway here is, if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to practice one act of self-nurturing this week, something that honors your emotional needs without apology. So, until next time, may you find the courage to be both vulnerable and strong as you navigate the cosmic currents. And this has been APM, and it's the Outlaw Astrology Podcast. One last thing, please, you can follow us on YouTube, Pinterest, and Instagram. You'll find those links in the show notes. And I thank you very much for tuning in. And here, with Outlaw Astrology, we don't just interpret the stars, we embody their wisdom. Peace and astral magic, star people.